Welcome back to Tell Me More with me, CJ Quarterbaum. Tell Me More exists to help bridge the gap in our intergenerational workplace dynamics, build better leaders, and ultimately gain the skills we need to prepare for the future. One of those skills, very important for us, that I don't think we spend enough time on is rest. And so today I am joined by Sabbatical Coach, Mikaela Ramsden. Mikaela, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, CJ.
Tell the people about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? And what do you do now?
Well, who I am, first and foremost, is a daughter, wife, sister, cousin, auntie, tia, Titi. Those are the most important roles in my life. And other than that, I am a sabbatical coach. I'm a former HR leader who got really, really burned out and decided that I needed to take a sabbatical, and I did that. Didn't go quite as planned because the pandemic interrupted my plans, but then I was able to turn that into being able to help others do the same thing. I am from Trinidad, as the accent can tell, although I've lived in the US my entire adult life. And now I live in the DC metro area.
I mean, I was just in DC last week. I didn't realize you lived there.
Yes, next time.
Okay. All right. So before we even get into what we're actually going to talk about, have you been
Hmm.
to St. James?
Yes, I have.
How did you feel about St. James?
Okay. So the first time it was really good. I honestly went in very skeptically because I was like, why are they trying to do fancy Chinese food? Because sometimes that goes left when they try to make it fancy. And I was really impressed. It was for a friend's birthday and the flavors, even though the construction was different, the flavors were on point. The second time was last year, and um, I was not as impressed as I was the first time, to be honest. It seemed like things shifted. It just wasn't quite right. And I heard that there was some drama behind the scenes with chefs and a sister restaurant and whatnot. So maybe that was a part of it. So yeah, I had two very different experiences.
Okay. So I went
What?
last
Uh,
year, about a year and a half ago.
hmm.
And so I am a man of Trini descent. I was born and
Yes.
raised in New York because my mother made mistakes in life. But, I fly my colors very proudly. And I'm like, ooh, our food deserves
Yeah.
to be elevated in the same way that all these other foods do.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
I think people ask me favorite foods, and I always have to take Trini food out of it because I'm like that's just me being biased. But when I look at French food or Italian food and I see the ways in
Hmm.
which they get the white tablecloth Michelin star treatment, I'm like, we
Hmm.
deserve that space. So I
Yes.
went to
Yes.
St. James very excited. I took
Hmm.
my 5-year-old daughter at the time,
Hmm.
and I was like, this is good, but the flavors aren't there. Like this would be
Hmm.
closer to like American soul Southern food. The
Hmm.
macaroni pie
Hmm.
was on point.
Hmm.
Outside of that, I was disappointed.
Yeah, yeah. The last time I was definitely disappointed. It was a bit too salty. It just was not what I'd experienced the first time. The first time, I don't remember what we had exactly, but it was all the flavors of like the curry and the doubles and all the exact flavors that we know, but elevated. So I was impressed. I was like, yes, if you're gonna do it, this is how to do it. And so I went back very hopeful and like you, it was kind of like, I wouldn't recommend it again, which is unfortunate because you want to be able to
Yeah.
pick up your people, but the restaurant business is hard. So I guess they are suffering that fate as well.
Okay, one more. Have you been to
Hmm.
Dogon?
Yes.
Dogon, man, that's my
Yes.
spot.
Right? Oh my goodness. It was I didn't know what to expect. I did not read the menu beforehand on purpose, and I don't usually because I like to be surprised. And I just wanted to stay. I mean, there's but so much that I can eat, but I was like, no, but I want to try everything. And the drinks were good. And I'm not somebody who can usually have like more than one drink at a time. And I had two because it was so good. Great, great vibe and experience. And I love what it is I read his memoir. Even though it's been out for a while, I read it, I don't know, maybe a year before I went to Dogon last year as well. Actually, it was on the same weekend. We were doing a little restaurant thing for our anniversary. And I was so impressed by his story and just the way that he just kept doing this. And I was like, well, we gotta go. We gotta go. and it was great. Sounds like you had a good time too.
It was so good. So his
Mm-hmm.
restaurant in New York, Tatiana. We're talking about
Mm-hmm.
Chef Kwame Onuachi for those of you who are
Yes.
uninitiated. His restaurant Tatiana in New York is one of
Mm-hmm.
the hardest reservations to get,
Mm-hmm.
but it
Mm-hmm.
is so incredible. So when I heard he had a sister restaurant in DC, so when each of my kids graduate from pre-K, I took them to DC for a weekend, just like a daddy kid
Aw.
trip. And
Yeah.
part of it is me getting to eat whatever I want to eat. And I'm like, you're just gonna come along for the ride. So I'm like, oh, we're going to Dogon. And it is
Yeah.
just as good as Tatiana. And you can actually
Mm.
get a reservation. So
Mm-hmm.
highly recommend if you're in the DC area, check out Dogon. If you're in New York and you have any bit of luck, go to Tatiana.
And let me give you a little tip for Dogon too. They fill up pretty quickly, but if you have flexibility and you can check on the day of, if they get a cancellation, you can slip in. So it's possible to get short notice reservations if you're just on it, because sometimes you do have to book a few weeks ahead.
Yeah, that's how
Yeah.
Tatiana is. They leave a couple of seats open. So
Mm-hmm.
people, I think they open at like 5. People will
Mm-hmm.
stand online from 1 o'clock to try to
Yeah.
get some of those seats, but it's worth it.
Yeah. It's
All
on
right,
my
let's talk.
list.
Let's
It's on
talk.
my list.
Yeah, let's talk about actual stuff now.
Okay. Okay.
So how did you become a sabbatical coach?
So, it's one of those things where it's something that because I did it myself, and it's so funny the reaction that when I made the decision to take the sabbatical, I didn't tell anybody for 2 years because I was planning very quietly. And then when I finally resigned, you get these looks like, what? Like, what do you mean you're not going anywhere? I'm like, no, I'm taking a sabbatical. And people just give you this look. And one guy actually said to me, how are you going to live? And I said, well, I've planned for it, so I'll be all right. Um, and the after the sabbatical, because the pandemic came and lots of different things happened, and I just fell back into HR through consulting because I was still off, and people who knew me and worked with me asked me to come and help them in their different companies um, at different points. And I thought, like, all right, I can do this. I can be an HR consultant because I wasn't trying to go back into a corporate role. But the conversations that I kept having with people about wanting to rest, wanting to take a break, not knowing how to do it was something that was just always in the back of my mind. And last year, um, I was at a conference in California, and you're talking about what are the things that you're doing. And every time I had to tell somebody I was like HR consultant, my tummy did a little flip. Like I wasn't proud of it. I wasn't feeling good about it. And the thing that had been, and I had tested it a bit back in 2021 with a few people I knew, and I was able to successfully help them plan their sabbaticals and make the best of it. And I was like, no, that's what I want to do. People are miserable, tired, burnt out, all of the things that we hear constantly. And not only have I done it and lived it and didn't, burn my life down, but I also have the perspective of being the person in HR who is approving leaves and, doing all of the things and trying to encourage people to work-life balance is not really a thing, right? But trying to encourage people to use all of the benefits that are available to them. And I was like, I'm just going to do this. This is the thing that I feel called to do, and I'm going to give it a go. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm giving it a go.
You said something interesting just now. Work-life balance isn't a thing.
hmm
Why?
Um, well, in the US, the culture of most companies just doesn't support it in the way that other countries do. So people talk about it. But for so many, and some people may actually have it if the nature of their jobs and their industries isn't overly demanding, right? They can go in, they can work their hours, and then they can leave work at the door and go live their lives. I've never experienced that. So for a lot of folks, particularly again in big industries, you're spending most of your waking hours at work. If you take into account the time that you have to take, get up, get dressed, not to mention the commute in this DC area, I mean, I didn't live that far from the office, and it could take me on a good day 40 minutes, on a bad day 2 hours. So you had to account for that. You end up spending most of your waking hours at work. And then, so what is the balance? A couple hours at night to eat dinner and like watch Netflix. And then on the weekends, you have to do your adulting, your errands, your whatnot, and most of your life. And so I think that it's just this grinded out culture in this country, the work hard, play later, which I just think is ridiculous. And we have the ability, in smaller organizations and different organizations to set a different culture. But I just think what's prevalent is that we think that we're giving ourselves some kind of balance, but in reality, we're not, because it's just what people have gotten accustomed to. And then when they get into positions where they can influence how things are, they tend to do what they've always done or what was done to them, and not always change the way that they're doing it.
Man, that's a bar. So in this hustle and grind culture,
Hmm.
taking a sabbatical, it's subversive, it's countercultural.
Hmm.
How do you do that?
So you to do it well, there's some planning and some forethought, right? It's not unless, you suddenly come into an inheritance or a lottery win. For most people, it's going to take some care to think about what they want to do and then plan for it. And really, what it comes down to, the biggest thing that people are need to do and are hesitant to do is to get their money right. So you need to get your financial house in order. You need to take a look at what's coming in, what's going out, and get a really clear sense of what your fixed expenses are, the things that, things will go left and you'll be in trouble if you don't pay them. Your rent, your mortgage, if you have a car payment, all those types of things. And to create a plan for once you can figure out what those fixed expenses are, you can do the math on how much money you need to live for the amount of time that you want to take off. And then you got to save. And you got to save not like, oh, well, I'll see what's left at the end before my next paycheck. You have to make saving the thing that you do as a priority actually before your paycheck even hits your bank account. The money is being diverted into the savings. I used to call mine my escape fund. And anytime I was at work and somebody was really driving me nuts and I was just wanting to pop off, but I had to take a deep breath, I'd open the app on my phone and I would look at it and I would say, okay, I'm not there yet. I need to keep it together. I need to bite my tongue and just deal with this until I get to where I feel like I can make that move. And so it sounds simple, but it's not easy because like we know, managing finances, folks get into a lot of debt for different reasons. I mean, student loans, all these types of things that can be tough. And so it can take time. But what I encourage people to do is to not give up the dream. I mean, you can be 35 and you know that I don't see how I can do this for the next 50 years. And you got to make a plan. The time is going to pass anyway. So might as well let the time pass while you're working on a plan to give you options you can either quit and take a sabbatical. You can request a leave in some cases to take the sabbatical, but having the cushion gives you options. And that is, I think, the biggest thing.
What led you described experiencing burnout yourself.
Mhm.
What was going on in your life and world that brought you to that place of being like, all right,
Mm.
I need to make a plan?
Well, that is a loaded question, CJ. It was just an accumulation of things over all the years. So when I moved to this country, it was a few weeks before I turned 17. And I had, graduated in Trinidad, done my CXC exams, and came to the States. We didn't know we would have this opportunity to come. So I, have to go to college. But as new immigrants, my mom, this was the late 90s. If the way that people are treating immigrants now, I mean, in so many ways, it's so much worse. They didn't even think that I could speak English. Somebody wanted to put me in an ESL class, and I was like, we just had a whole conversation in English. All I have that's different from you is a different accent. Like it was so ridiculous. So I was like, I'm not going to squander this opportunity to be in this country. So what I did is I got a full-time job and then I actually went to community college because I hadn't done any SATs. I hadn't done anything that would allow me to go to American college in a traditional way. And I was like, oh, wait, I can work and go to school because I couldn't do that in Trinidad. Trinidad, you were either a student or you were working. And I just thought that was great. So I worked full time and I went to school part time. And it took me 7 years. I got my associate's degree. I took a little time off in between because in my head I thought, oh, I'm going to find a way to be a traditional student and live on campus. That never happened. I transferred to Rutgers and I finished my bachelor's degree there. And so I had been grinding, literally working hard to support myself since the age of 17. And I was in my mid 30s where I was like, I'm so tired. I got it's a whole long story about how I got into HR in the first place in New York. And because I felt like I was behind everybody else, I was a little bit older. It was only 2 years, but at the time it felt like 10. I felt like I had to work extra hard to catch up, and to get promoted and to do all the things and to learn. And I'm also very naturally curious and ambitious. And so it was rewarded with opportunities and promotions and bigger jobs. But also became the person who was always like, oh, there's a crisis. Something is going left. Mikaela. I became very good at that, crisis management and change management and those types of things. And so it's a double-edged sword because I'm always in like a pressure cooker situation. I kept getting those jobs, and it was just too much. And then also being in HR as a Black woman in this country is interesting. And a lot of times you're in rooms where the conversations that are happening, um, you kind of can't believe your ears. And then oftentimes you try to be the moral compass of the room. You try to be the person that says, but wait a minute, time out. Like, no, this is not what we're going to do. And so it feels like a constant fight and a constant pushback and a constant pushing the ball up the hill like Sisyphus and people pushing back. And I was just tired. I was just sick of it. And so when I looked at my future and I looked at people who were 10, 15, 20 years ahead of me, I said, they are as stressed out and doing the things that I'm doing. I can't do that for another 20 years. I have to do something different. And I don't know what that different is. And I'm working so many hours. I mean, I was working long days. I had a boss that used to joke with me, like legit joke with me, because he's a good guy and he's a good friend now. If I left at 5 o'clock, you know, on the rare occasion that I did, he'd say, "Oh, you're taking a half day," because my days were so long. And so I said, I don't want that for myself. I don't want that for my future. But I just didn't have the time or space or energy or mental power to figure that out while I was still working. So my plan was to figure out how to get some time off and then take a break and then figure out what I do next. And that's what I did.
What did the sabbatical do for you?
Ooh, it made me realize that I had some serious PTSD from corporate life. And when it slows you down, you get to hear the things and feel the things that you don't realize are in you and around you when you're going at full speed. It's kind of like, I like the analogy of, when you're driving in a car and you drive a route all the time, you don't get to see everything that's on the sides because you're so focused on the road. But when you're the passenger and somebody else is driving, they're like, oh, I didn't know there was a house there. And oh, look at the cows or whatever it is, right? That you see. I'm living in the suburbs, so, I see cows. um, so, so what it does, it just kind of allows you to take stock of your life, what you've been doing, what's around you, to observe more of what's happening with people, and to realize that the things that I had normalized feeling, the stress and the anxiety that was my baseline, was not normal. And when you start to feel what calm feels like, if you have a moment that brings you back to that level of stress, you're like, oh, this is a familiar feeling. And now I realize that it's not a good feeling to have. So it's I mean, there's so many things that taking time off does for you in terms of perspective and life, and it changes. I mean, one of the big things is like you realize, like, okay, you think you have to make all this money, and it's still the goal that everybody has to live in this country, but you're like, actually, I can still live all right on less, because that's the decision that you make for that period of time to do that. So, um, it is. I have no regrets, and another really big thing that I think is important to mention is one of the things that accelerated my quit date in 2019 is a really good friend of mine was diagnosed with terminal colon cancer. And he was just a couple of years older than I am. And I had already had this plan in motion, but seeing him, talking to his wife and her saying, like, you gotta come now. And going to South Carolina to see him in the hospital was like confronting. This is a man who still had so much life ahead of him, and he was not going to get to enjoy it. And he ended up lasting quite some time he fought really, really hard, but he did lose that battle. And that's the thing that, when I got home from visiting him, I was like, you see, what is the point? I don't want to work my whole life like this. And then you never know what's going to happen. And you don't even get to enjoy the fruits of your labor. And that for me was such a huge catalyst. And then unfortunately, a year after that, another very good friend of mine who was the same age got the same diagnosis. And so that really losing people who you hold so dear puts things into perspective of it's almost like I got to live for them because they didn't get to do it. So I'm going to make sure that I do it. And it was a lot. There's so many emotions that happen in that time off when you finally have time to think and hear your own thoughts and feelings. Um, but it's if folks don't want to hear their inner thoughts, it may not be for them. But if you are willing to sit with it and work through it, highly recommend.
Sorry to hear about both of your friends,
Thank you.
as death is it's this sobering reminder of the preciousness of life. And I
Hmm.
think so we're not that far apart in age. And I think that as we see, our generation sees more and more people around our age pass way too soon, living in the world that we live in where all of the social contracts are broken, where that like boomer return on investment you get for giving your life to the job isn't there anymore. I think it really has our generation and then the generation below us, they've just gone nuts. Really looking at this kind of psychological contract that we have with work and saying things need to be different.
Hmm.
That inner thought piece though, I think that's really hard for most of us as we live in this really distracted world and a world full of noise, and we we have endless entertainment in front of us. I was talking to my grandmother one time, and so both my grandmothers, one is 93, the one from Trinidad is 93, and the one from America is 85. The one from Trinidad, she had 10 kids, and she would say to me, she was like, what else am I gonna do? Like, we didn't have any TV back then. And then my 85-year-old grandmother, same thing. She's got like 9 or 10 kids.
Yeah.
And I remember one time talking to her, and she's like, oh yeah, I would watch TV until TV went off. Like, what do you mean TV went off? She's like, no, there was a time where TV just cut off.
Hmm.
We don't have that. We have endless entertainment, always able to distract ourselves. What was it like for you to sit with those inner thoughts and to really be with your mind?
Yeah, it was truly an emotional roller coaster. And this was, again, during the pandemic. So I had a lot of emotions and stress about that too. Especially having close friends and family who were in the hospitals, doing the work, trying to keep these folks alive and being exposed. And the grappling with that for me, one of the things that I decided I needed was to go to therapy, and I'd never been to therapy before. But I couldn't find a therapist that had either openings or that I vibed with. There's a lot of intersectionality in me, and for me to sort of open up and have that conversation, the vibe has got to be right. And I was having a hard time with that. So what I chose to do to to be able to talk things through and get some help is to get a coach. And I did different sort of coaching programs or with other people. But one of the things that I think was the most helpful is to, when we sit with things in our head, sometimes we just go around and around and around and around, and you can't really. It's like you're chasing your tail, right? You can't really find the thread and what it leads to. And I read a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And it's been around for a really long time, I think maybe since the 90s. And a lot of people who are creatives talk about how good this book is, but it gives you exercises each day, journaling exercises. And again, was I somebody that journaled before? No, I tried a few times, but I was like, and but doing the exercises in that book, because the way the questions are asked and that you have to think through it really helped me to almost like sort through my thoughts and my feelings, acknowledge it, recognize it, and figure out how I'm moving forward. And it doesn't end. It's not like there's a point where I said, okay, I started here and then I ended. It's still continuing, right? The exploration, because in that time, you're also growing older. Life is happening around you. The country continues to happen. So it's not like there's ever an end point of the exploration. but the commitment to doing the work, I think, is the first step. The recognition that it may be confronting, it may be emotional, um, but it's important because you don't want to numb your way through life and all of the things like the constant TV and the constant entertainment, um, is its own form of drug, right? It's its own way of numbing out. And not to say that sometimes we just need that, right? Like you just need to put on your music and dance and pretend like everything is fine. But living your entire life like that, you're gonna wake up one day and be like, oh, I got a lot of work to do. And so the thing for me that's how I worked through it with the resources that I had, not being able to find a therapist. I am a nerd. I love books. And so I will go to, if I cannot find a person to help me, I will find a book that will help me do whatever I gotta do.
I say to people all the time, if there's one thing you're going to do in this life, it's read.
Mm-hmm.
Read widely, read things that don't pertain to you. Just be curious.
Yes.
So there's always that there's one of my favorite statements is you are in the best position to help the person who is where you were 2 or 3 years ago. So coming out of sabbatical, what does your coaching practice look like now, having lived through it?
So my coaching practice now is one of the main things is that I don't want people to feel any kind of shame or judgment, right? Because one of the things that can be confronting in the decision is like in the decision to take a sabbatical, that is that you feel like, oh, shoulda, woulda, coulda, should have done this, should have done this differently, shouldn't have done that. And it's not a space for any kind of shame or judgment. What we've done is what we've done, and we are where we are. And let's just figure out how to move forward. We're not going to beat ourselves up for what that is. And actually, last week I made a decision to shift things a little bit because it was feeling a little tone deaf to be pushing and talking about sabbatical coaching when so many people are losing their jobs and they're feeling stressed out about the future and they're, the uncertainty around AI replacing their jobs, etc. And what I've decided to do is it's still very much the same ethos, but I come from HR. I know some things. And I know some things about how this process works in the background because unfortunately I was in the rooms where these decisions were being made. And I always had a knot in my stomach doing it. I was never ever comfortable working on or managing layoffs. And so what I've switched to doing, I shouldn't say switched, what I've incorporated is exit preparedness. So and exit preparedness it's the same thing that you need to do if you're planning to, like in the future, you want the option to take 2 months off, 6 months off to have a sabbatical, whether it's a leave of absence or you actually quit. Same principles apply, but the focus now on, okay, let's get you prepared for if you have an unplanned exit from your organization. So they decide to do a layoff. What are the things that you don't know that your company may offer that may have so you're set up? And you can plan for that. And then, if you are well prepared and that unexpected layoff happens, you may be in a position that instead of scrambling and being stressed out and feeling like I got to apply to 100 jobs a day and take anything that comes, it may give you the space to pause and reflect and say, I'm going to take some time to figure out what's next. I'm going to take some time to do the things that have been on my bucket list or my someday list that I've just not had time and space to do. I'm going to take some time to go home to wherever my home country is and spend a month with my parents because I haven't spent more than a week with them, since I was 18. And that's what my work is doing right now. And I expect that it's going to continue to evolve because I wanted to be reflective of what people need in the current society and economy. And I think what people need right now is some guidance on how to withstand what's going on, how to land on their feet with options.
That's really good. I think in the kind of work that we do, because we operate in similar spaces, we have to be nimble. We
Hmm.
can't be so set in our offerings and our framings that we miss what's actually happening around us. So I really, really respect you reading the room and making that pivot while still having your core thing. You're not, people still need to take sabbaticals and you still want to help
Absolutely.
people prepare for that. But also, it's like, hey, just given the current climate, let me also help you in this moment because I have those skills. Um, what would you say for someone who's they're entering into a sabbatical?
Mhm.
What are like the big three things they need to know to get the most out of this time?
Hmm. It's a good question. The first thing that I will say is resist the urge to overschedule it. Folks who are like, I have this list of all of these things. It's kind of like, people say, okay, I'm going to go travel for 2 months and I'm going to do 20 countries in 2 months. And I want to encourage you to say, don't do that. Maybe two, maybe three. But the whole point of it is to slow down and not to collect chips as you go and to be like, okay, here's the list, because it becomes like, I don't know, sabbatical Olympics. You're trying to do as much as possible and get the most out of it. And the point is to slow down and give yourself time to rest, your nervous system to heal, sometimes your body to just heal from the stress that you've been under. So resist the urge to overschedule. I also like to encourage people to not immediately pack their bags and leave, depending on sort of how the sabbatical is. If they've quit and they're moving to a different country, great. But let's say you're going to take 6 months off and you've been hustling, you've been going to work, you've had a long commute. Give yourself a few weeks to just be in your home, wake up with no alarm clock if you can, if you don't have kids to get out the house, and do those 10 to yourself, but give a deadline. Like have an exit point, have like a plane ticket that you're going somewhere, have some kind of commitment, meet your friends for dinner that you weren't able to do before because you were working until 7 o'clock each night. Like do the things that you couldn't do and feel how that feels. That's the second thing. And then the third thing that I would suggest is to document it. Take a video of yourself if you're inclined to journaling, because so many things are going to come up, so many thoughts, so many feelings, and you're going to want to reflect on that after. And it may actually be the makings of a really great story on the other side. It could be a book. You could end up being a sabbatical coach. There's so many things that come out of it that change the way you show up in your personal relationships, in your professional relationships. And it's going to be coming fast. And I really encourage people to document it in whatever way that feels comfortable for them.
It's good. I'm a big proponent of just writing and
Hmm.
or just capturing the story in some way,
Hmm.
because life really, to me, it only makes sense in reverse. It's when we look back 5 years, we go, man, 2021 was insane. But I see how this happened and this happened and this happened that got me to this place. And without that experience, however frustrating and difficult it might have been, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Exactly.
I'm curious. Right? So sabbatical for you came at the end of burnout. Do you have any thoughts on, because I've been like you, been working since I was 15. I've been living on my own since I was 17. I'm 38 now. I'm tired. Like I
Hmm.
want a break.
Hmm.
I do way
Hmm.
too much. But how do we what's the case for, trying to think of a good way to word this. How do we just prevent the burnout so that we're getting a sabbatical not because we're so depleted, but simply because this should be a natural rhythm in life?
That is a good question. And it's a tough one. I don't think that there's an easy answer to it because so like I was right around your age when I was like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. And I think it's something about the late 30s where you start to feel just the crush of everything you've been doing and trying to look at the future. So you're right on time. Um, but preventing it is a mindset shift. And it's also part of the work that I'm trying to do, right? But I think the younger generations are doing this really well. I think it's us. We have been indoctrinated a certain way. And I am so pleased and proud to see how some of these younger folks are taking a different approach to life and work than perhaps we did. And the prevention, I think, comes in um, sometimes you have to take a pause and ask yourself, why am I doing this thing that I'm doing? Right. So at work, for example, we feel like we have to take every great opportunity that comes, regardless of the personal cost or sacrifice. And because everybody's like, oh, this is going to be good for your career, or after this, da 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 da, it's only a year, it's only 2 years. But what I encourage people to do is to step back and evaluate what the impact, the potential impact of taking the thing is. And sometimes the answer is no. You have to balance if it's worth it versus what the impact is going to have on you personally. And that had I made some different decisions, and I said no to a lot of things, but I got bored very easily and they knew it. And so to keep me engaged, it would be like, okay, put her on this project and do this. Again, double-edged sword. And so the prevention is that. And then the other thing that I shouldn't say it's that. I think it can be different for different people, but that's one of the things. The other thing that still is happening, and I encourage people to not do, is a lot of folks still aren't taking all of their time off, which sounds crazy to me. If you have vacation, you have earned it, they have accounted for it. You shouldn't be, I mean, you roll over a little bit of vacation, but do not forfeit vacation for a job ever. And a lot of people do that. But the last thing that I will say is how I've begun planning my time and my years. And it's the other thing that I encourage people to do. People always say, plan the fun first, plan your life first, and then let the work fit into it. And it can be tough when work is dictating your schedule, right? Monday through Friday, or sometimes for people even more than that. But what I say to them is, you have to find the big things in your life, find the things that you want to do, and put that on the calendar. Go through your bucket list. Go through your, oh, I always wanted to go to, it could just be an event that's happening at the convention center in your town. Prioritize that and get those things scheduled, because what it does is it gives you, let's just say it's just on the weekend, it gives you a psychological break from life and from work, and it fills your bucket of joy, the joy bucket in life. And it's little things that you have to do constantly and consistently and intentionally to be able to prevent the burnout. But some jobs, I mean, I'm going to keep it real. If you're in investment banking, at some point you're going to hit a wall. You're going to get burned out. If you're in consulting and you're traveling Monday through Thursday, chances are you're going to get to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to get on a plane again. And so it's just trying to get as much balance as possible and making a plan, right? Having a plan so that you have options, that before you hit the worst burnout where you end up in the emergency room, which happens to some people, that you having a cushion and having a plan and being in a good place financially gives you options before you get to the point where you completely crash out.
Good. I think there's, to circle back to how we started,
Hmm.
I open this podcast the same way every time. Tell me about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? And you started with your identity as a daughter, as a wife, as an auntie. You didn't start with work.
Yeah.
And I think there's something profound there of, for so many of us, work is our identity. Work is
Hmm.
who we are. It's not just what we do.
Hmm.
I've always been a bad employee because I just think I was raised to be a little too fierce and independent.
Hmm.
But I would tell my jobs, there's 168 hours in a week. By the
Hmm.
math, you can't be my primary thing.
Hmm.
And that it probably explains why my career is going the way it's gone and why I'm here now. But there is something to be said for not living for work, for it to not be your end all be all. It sounds like early in your career, work was your primary identity. How did you shift that?
Yeah. So it's so interesting that, because I didn't realize that I did that. And you reflecting that back to me actually makes me really happy. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you when the shift happened. I know exactly when it happened. I went to France in 2022, my first time going to France. It was on a retreat, and I was very intentional. When I travel, I really like to understand the customs, talk to the local people, all those types of things. And what I realized in my research and in talking to folks there is that the French do not lead, like they don't do work talk at social events. They have, for anybody who knows, they have very strict rules about their work week. They have very strict rules about, like, you can't even send or respond to emails after work hours. These things are codified in the law of the country, which I can really appreciate. And I was aware of it before working in international companies, right? But experiencing it while I was there. And I really liked that they were like, oh, yeah, we do not talk about work at social events in the evenings, on the weekends, that type of thing. And that sort of, I don't know, flipped a switch in my brain about, yeah, before I am an employee, I am all of these things. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing that I am is whatever I am to my friends and family. And it was one of the points, it was pretty pivotal in my sabbatical because it rewired the way I think about a lot of things, including like I don't eat lunch at my desk anymore. And I used to do that all the time. I did that for 2 decades. It made me shift and be really intentional about that. And then going back to when I was working, I I thought that I was really good and had good boundaries around work and whatnot. Like I would work really late and such, but I'm not answering emails on the weekends. I'm not doing those types of things, right? I didn't think I was a workaholic. When I was in South Carolina visiting my friend who was in the hospital, we were giving his parents a ride back to his house. And his dad, who I had not seen in maybe 15 years. The last time I saw him was his house was the party house in Brooklyn where we would like meet up before we went to Fete. And so I feel like he didn't really know me. I was just one of the people in the crowd. And then he moved away. And so he says to me, he's like, Mikaela, are you still a workaholic? Oh my God. I was like, excuse me? I was never a workaholic. I had to sit with what is it about me in the meetings? And I'm literally meeting this man in the context of going to Lime and Fete with my friends. What made him think I was a workaholic? And the only thing that I could come up with is that so, we had a couple of summers where we went hard, but I would always show up to work on time. I could be getting home from the party at 6 o'clock in the morning and I would be at work at 8:30. Always. And whereas other people would not go to work, they would be, asleep on the couch in his house. I was going to work. And maybe that's where he thought I was a workaholic. But my identity, I would definitely have introduced myself with my job title before. And I think that that is a cultural thing. I worked really hard, but I always, always, always prioritized my life, my family, um, in whatever way I had to. Like, people will say, oh, I'm working so hard, I can't date. And I was like, in what world can you not? I don't understand. I don't explain that to me. But so I would make time for everything, but work definitely got the majority of my time, and people around me had to understand that, don't come at me with any nonsense during the week because I'm working. So I think that taking the time to pause again and having to shed the identity of being this person in HR and that taking the majority of the time has just given me space to really prioritize the other things in life and therefore not even realizing it. I started with intention, but now it's unintentional. That yeah, my identity is not my work. And that the work is the thing that fuels my life and not the other way around. And the work has to be meaningful and fulfilling and not something that is depleting. And that is a non-negotiable for me now. And who knows what direction it will take me in life, but I've done that and now I'm doing something different because I want to go into my later years happy and, feeling like I have lived a full and well-rounded life. I've done good work. I still am a very hard worker. It's just intrinsic. I will never not be that. But at the same time, I'm having a hell of a good time and I'm just going to keep doing that.
Man, I love that. And I love the parallels in our lives and our stories. Um, you are a great encouragement. And with that, Mikaela, tell the people where they can find you so they can get in contact with you for some sabbatical coaching or for some exit strategy coaching or for just anything you might offer in general. Where can they find you?
Yeah, thank you. So you can find me. I'm on Instagram a little. I'm gonna improve that. Social media has just not been my thing. But you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Mikaela_Ramsden. That's Mikaela_Ramsden. I'm Mikaela Ramsden on LinkedIn. Those are the only two social media places that I am. And then my website is mikaelaramsden.com. So it's Mikaela Ramsden everywhere.
Perfect. You got to listen. You got to own your name and own it in every space that you can give it in.
Yeah.
Mikaela, thank you for joining me on this episode of Tell Me More. And thank you for watching this episode or listening to it, however it is that you're getting it. I'm curious, not just what's some nugget you took away, but what's the next intentional practice that you're going to take towards resting more and working less? And I'll see you next time as I ask you to tell me more.